Record high commodity prices have fueled the real estate market to historic levels, and nowhere is that more apparent than in this state. Between the middle of 2011 and the middle of 2012, the USDA says Nebraska farmland recorded a 33% increase. That's the highest increase of any state in the nation. We recently talked with Bruce Johnson about whether that means Nebraska farmland has entered a bubble that's about to burst.
History will tell us that when you get into real estate, you're going to be talking about times of boom, rapid appreciation. You're going to have some issues where bubbles are formed and eventually busts will occur. And that's been proven repeatedly over time.
Historically in Nebraska, when we look at farmland, what have been the major issues when you look at booms, bubbles, and busts there?
Well, certainly strong income conditions, which is the underlying basis of land valuation, agricultural land, gets a market for a pretty strong demand built up, and so values will follow that income pattern. And if they are sustained long enough, they get to be kind of the expectations, and then expectations carry it maybe beyond what is reality.
Have there been those situations in the past where it's gotten scary and there has been a bust and then you're a little more careful about what you do with your money going forward?
Well, yes, and many folks my age certainly can see it full cycle. The 70s were a strong income period of time, and of course we ran up land like we had never done before. Only to pretty much hit a crisis in the early 80s with a variety of considerations and dropping income and ballooning interest rates and all of that. And we crashed, and we actually did see land values from 1980 to 85 drop to 40 cents on the dollar. That's huge, and that takes a toll on the whole economy of agriculture.
Currently, what are the land prices? Put in perspective for me how much they've increased over the past few years here in Nebraska.
Well, in the past 5 years, we've basically seen a doubling of agricultural land, real estate in Nebraska. Unheard of. In fact, compared to the 70s run up to the crash of the 80s, it's even beyond that in terms of the buildup in just 5 years. Some of the areas of the state, we've actually seen a 125% increase in roughly 5 years.
So that would be the boom. Then does it
That's
create?
The boom.
The
Yes.
question is, then is it a bubble?
Well, when you look at a bubble, everybody has their idea of a bubble. And how you interpret it. But if you look at a bubble as a situation where values get beyond the foundational fundamentals, and if you look at what's happened in the last few years, or even the last 18 months, I would say yes, we have definitely moved into a bubble stage.
What are those fundamentals? Commodity prices?
Absolutely, commodity prices and income levels that have been phenomenal for the last number of years, particularly for crop producers, but do not look likely to be forever the norm.
That's what your trepidation is then,
Yes.
just because it's high now.
Yeah.
What about the overall economy? Certainly that is, you could argue on either side of it right now, but there's nothing certain there.
No. And that's, Jeff, is precisely the issue. There's an awful lot of uncertainty. And so risk, I think the participants in the market are and many of them are very shrewd about this, but we do have to really factor in the risk card here. And at this point in time, I think there are some issues that saying, hey, we can certainly see a correction.
Does the final part play out here? Does it bust?
Well, that's what we say here is basically that's an interesting question. One reason that it probably won't be a total bust is because quite differently from the 80s, we are not over leveraged in agriculture. In general, we have some folks that are getting there, I'll tell you, but we're not burdened with debt. And so, the idea of farm foreclosures and sheriff sales, that's not likely in rural Nebraska. That said, I think we actually do have a situation where it's time to catch your breath and begin to realize that the growth and the expectations of what we've experienced to just continue is not as likely to happen.
As Bruce wrote in a recent Cornhusker Economics article, a total agricultural land market meltdown seems remote, but this part of the country could realistically see a downward market correction of 30% or more in just a few short years.